The future of food. What's that going to be like? When I was a kid, I watched Back to the Future, and I was promised there's going to be flying cars. And I wouldn't have to eat my dinner because there'd be a couple of pills in the morning and you'd be done with it. But we're not doing that. Why? Well, there is more to food than just nutrition. Take my regular Sunday morning. I have a big breakfast. I start with croissants, cherry yogurt, camembert, gouda, fruit, you name it. Coffee, the smell of coffee, of course, needs to be drifting through the air. I cannot get my day started without coffee, can you? This one particular Sunday morning, I had everything ready and set up, and I was going to go back to the kitchen to get the last puzzle piece missing to make that perfect moment last. But as I opened the fridge, I realized I've run out of milk. So, no milk today on that day for me, which is terrible. Coffee without milk just doesn't do it for me. So, as I open up my newspaper, I realize, all of the articles. There is one about climate change, one about farmers on strike, another one about us reaching 8 billion people on Earth. And at that moment, I realize, at the rate that we're going, not only could it be no milk today, soon it could be no milk every day. What a horrible thought that would be. So I turn back to my table. No more croissants, no yogurt, no cheese. And essentially all I'm left with is black coffee and apples. So for me, that sounds like, if you imagine the future of food without milk, it sounds like an Armageddon, an apocalypse. I tried all the alternatives, don't get me wrong. I like soy milk, I like almond milk, but they are great, but they're just not the same. Because milk is a taste enhancer. Everything essentially tastes better with milk. Don't you agree? I guess we kind of take milk for granted a little bit. We do not appreciate it that much because it's such a basic component of all our diets. How often have you been to the supermarket just to come back home and realize, forgot the milk? For me, it was the last thing I was going to get for my breakfast from the fridge. But I think it used to be different. Milk used to be appreciated. When I grew up in a small village in the middle of Germany, as so many other people, my grandparents were farmers. They had some 12 cows and a little bit of land, and that was enough to support the whole family. My grandpa used to bring the milk every morning to the middle of the town to get picked up by the milk truck. But nowadays, small farms like this wouldn't be able to survive anymore. There just isn't enough money in making milk. And that's a big problem, because if all the farms go out of business, who's going to feed us then? In the last decade, in Germany alone, 10% of farms have gone out of business because they couldn't compete anymore. What are my takeaways? I'm a scientist, so my mind is set on solutions. I feel that milk is a part of our culture, of our culinary heritage, and it's important to preserve this. However, if we want to have milk in the fridges and on the tables of our kids in the future, we have to come to a better way of producing it. And that's what my research focuses on. We are a small team of people who have set their minds to producing the milk of the future. And we essentially take cells from cows, from the milk of cows, and incubate them and let them do exactly what they're used to doing, what they've evolved to do, which is to make milk. Just not in the cow. Why is this important? Our milk is in danger. We come from the Black Forest region, is where my company is based. And in the Black Forest region, they have cows on the top of the mountains, but the wells there have run dry. So every day, big trucks full of water need to be brought up there so that the cows have enough to drink. And it's the same thing when we look at places like Italy, for instance. Not speaking of the Middle East. What can we do to make sure that also our kids will have access to real milk? Well, we have built a team, essentially the A-team of scientists and engineers that we're trying to build, who are focusing on just that, making the milk of the future, our vision of the milk of the future, possible and accessible to the next generations. How do we do it? Well, think of the last time you had a beer. Anybody drinking beer? Great. Do you also know how it's produced? The hands are getting less and less. Well, in a bioreactor. Just what we do is essentially the same. Just instead of using yeast in the bioreactors, we're using animal cells, cow cells, directly from the milk. We incubate them in our bioreactors and we let them make milk in there. It was pioneered by people such as Mark Post and Willem van Eelen, who 10 years ago had developed the first cell-cultivated burger, which could fit on the palm of my hand. And at that time, the cost was around €250,000. Now, 10 years later, the prices have dropped dramatically, and the first cell-cultivated meat is already being sold in places such as Singapore. I think we're ready for the next step, which is cell-cultivated milk. Why would we be wanting to switch to cell-cultivated milk? For me, there's 3 main reasons. First of all, we don't have to rely on mass dairy farming anymore to feed all 8 billion people. Second, it's much better for the cows. The cows can stay on their pastures because we don't need an enormous amount of cows anymore. They can stay with their young, they can feed their calves. And while they are staying on the pastures, they are actually helping climate change because they are building up the humus layer, which in turn also binds carbon. Third, we will have cows on the pastures, but we don't need enormous amounts of farmland anymore for producing their feed. So instead of having to cut down more trees, we can actually plant some trees, start renaturing Earth. And last but not least, what we're going to get is the purest milk possible, without contaminating antibiotics or bacteria, just milk. So, next time you have some milk, think about how it's produced and how we can make it better. Change your milk, and together we can change the world. Thank you.